The great chamber of the Galactic Council stood empty where Ambassador Dehayan should have been. His seat positioned between the Krillian delegation and the Pleiadian observers remained vacant for the first time in 70 years. The other representatives noticed but said nothing at first. Dehayan was known for his punctuality. He arrived early to every session, often spending hours reviewing documents and preparing statements that would inevitably be ignored. Counselor. Vexler called the session to order. His voice echoed through the crystalline dome that housed the council chambers. Today's agenda included trade negotiations, border disputes, and resource allocation. Standard matters that had been handled the same way for thousands of years. The absence of Earth's ambassador was noted in the official record, but given no special attention. 3 days passed before anyone thought to inquire. A junior aide was dispatched to the human embassy, a modest building near the council complex. The aide returned, confused. The embassy was empty. Not abandoned in haste, but carefully closed. Every file had been removed. Every system had been properly shut down. A simple message displayed on the main terminal. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. We wish you well. Vexler dismissed the matter with a wave of his chitinous hand. Humans were emotional creatures, he reminded the council. They took offense easily. They would return once they calmed down. The council had more important matters to attend to than babysitting a species that had joined galactic civilization only 300 years ago. But the reports kept coming. On Tarim 5, the industrial heart of the Krillian Empire, human engineers failed to report for their shifts. Their quarters were empty. Their personal belongings were gone. The factory supervisors were annoyed but not concerned. Humans made up more than half the engineering staff, but surely the work could continue without them. On the frontier worlds, human military personnel began evacuating their posts. The defense fleet, which humans had established to protect the outer regions, withdrew system by system. They left behind their stations intact and their equipment functional. They transmitted coordinates of known pirate hideouts and patrol routes to local authorities. Then they jumped to hyperspace and vanished towards Sol. Merchant captains reported seeing human cargo vessels turning back. Every human ship in council space changed course. They completed their current deliveries, paid their docking fees, filed their departure notices properly, and left. There were no angry declarations, no threats, no demands for negotiation. Just silence and methodical withdrawal. Counselor. Indara of the Pleiadian Collective watched these reports with growing unease. She had worked with Dehayan on several committees over the years. He was not impulsive. He did not act without careful thought. She requested access to the Council's communication logs with Earth. What she found troubled her deeply. Over the past year, Dehayan had sent 47 formal requests for Council consideration. Requests for human colonies to receive voting representation. Requests for human innovations to be properly credited. Requests for trade agreements that did not exclusively favor the older species. Every single request had been denied. Most had been denied without discussion. Several had been mocked openly during council sessions. Indara brought her findings to the full council. She suggested that perhaps humanity's departure was not emotional instability, but a calculated response to systematic mistreatment. Vexler laughed. The sound was harsh and grating, like metal scraping stone. They are children playing at politics, Vexler said. They contribute nothing that cannot be replaced. Let them sulk in their little solar system. They will come crawling back when they realize how much they need us. The other counselors agreed. Humanity had no unique resources. They controlled no strategic territory. They possessed no military that could threaten the Council. Their technology, while occasionally clever, was derivative of principles the older species had discovered millennia ago. What could humanity possibly offer that the galaxy truly needed? On the research station, Kepler 7, Dr. Biora continued her work in the xenobiology lab. She was one of perhaps 100 humans who had chosen not to return to Sol System. When her colleagues asked why she stayed, she said simply that her research was not yet complete. When they asked why the others had left, she smiled sadly and changed the subject. Station Commander Threlker, Pleiadian like Indara, tried to engage Biora in conversation about the withdrawal. He had always respected the human scientist. She had made breakthroughs that had eluded his people for generations. Her approach to problems was different, more intuitive, less bound by traditional thinking. Why did they leave? Threlker asked her one evening in the station's observation deck. They stood before the great windows, watching a nebula paint the darkness with streams of pink and purple light. Biora was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke softly. How long would you stay where you were not wanted? How long would you give your best efforts to people who despised you for it? How long would you smile and bow and accept insults, hoping that kindness would eventually be returned? But we never, Threlker began. You personally, perhaps not, Biora interrupted gently. But the Council? The society you have built. For 300 years, humanity has been the galaxy's servants. We mined your asteroids. We crewed your ships. We staffed your hospitals and schools and factories. We shared our discoveries freely. We asked only for respect, for acknowledgement, for a voice in decisions that affected our people. She turned to face him. Her eyes held no anger, only exhaustion. We received contempt instead. We were mocked in council chambers. Our innovations were stolen and credited to others. Our people were paid less for the same work. Our requests for representation were denied again and again. So we made a choice. We chose dignity over acceptance. We chose silence over begging for scraps of respect. Threlker had no response. Biora returned to watching the nebula. You will understand soon enough, she said quietly. The galaxy will teach you what you refuse to learn from us. In the council chambers, Vexther was already planning humanity's replacement. The Krillian Empire would expand its engineering programs. The Pleiadian Collective would increase medical training. The younger species would be recruited to fill the labor gaps. Everything would continue as it always had, but on 47 worlds, factories were beginning to fail. Hospitals were running short of staff. Fields were producing smaller harvests. Ships were breaking down without human mechanics to maintain them. The galaxy had not yet noticed, but it would, soon. 3 months had passed since the last human ship left Council space. The galaxy was beginning to understand what it had lost, though most still refused to admit it. The first real crisis struck on Terram 5, where the massive industrial complexes that produced 70% of the Council's manufactured goods began to fail. Chief Engineer Drechtel stared at the main reactor display with growing panic. The temperature readings were climbing into dangerous territory. He had tried everything he knew, every procedure in the technical manuals, but nothing worked. The reactor had been designed and optimized by human engineers over decades of careful refinement. The manuals explained what to do, but not why it worked. The humans had possessed an intuitive understanding of the systems that the manuals could not capture. Shut it down, Drechtel finally ordered. Shut down all of Complex 7. Within a week, 4 more complexes followed. The remaining Krillian engineers could keep the old systems running. But the improved designs that humans had implemented were beyond their understanding. Production dropped by 40%, then 60%. Cargo shipments that supplied dozens of worlds began to arrive late or not at all. Counselor Vexther received the reports in his private chambers. He read them 3 times, unwilling to believe what they said. The economic projections were catastrophic. If production continued to fall, the Krillian Empire would face shortages within 6 months. He had been so certain that human contributions were minimal, easily replaced. The numbers proved him wrong. On the frontier, the situation was worse. Pirate attacks had increased dramatically. The human defense fleet had patrolled vast regions of space that other species considered unprofitable to protect. Those regions were now lawless. Raiders operated with impunity. Merchant vessels traveled in armed convoys, or not at all. Insurance rates for frontier shipping increased by 300%. A Pleiadian cargo captain named Shurthaz barely survived an attack on his ship. He had been hauling medical supplies to a colony world when pirates struck. He remembered the last time this had happened, 5 years ago. A human patrol ship had responded to his distress call within minutes. The pirate vessel had fled immediately. This time, his distress call went unanswered. He lost his cargo and half his crew. When he returned to port, reporters asked him about the attack. Shurthas, who had never spoken publicly about politics before, said something that would be repeated across the galaxy. Where were the humans? They protected us for 300 years. We never thanked them. We never paid them for it. They did it because they believed it was right. Now they are gone, and we remember them only because we are bleeding. The medical crisis developed more slowly, but cut deeper. Human doctors and researchers had staffed facilities across Council. Space. They had not been the most technically knowledgeable, but they approached problems differently. They saw connections that other species missed. They tried unconventional solutions when conventional ones failed. Dr. Haniel had been the lead researcher on the wasting plague, a disease that had killed millions across 12 species. She had been close to a cure, approaching the problem from an angle that had never been considered. Her research notes remained, but they were incomplete. Other scientists tried to continue her work. They understood the individual steps, but not the overall vision. The breakthrough remained tantalizingly out of reach while death tolls climbed. On Zendar, an agricultural world, the harvest was failing. Human agronomists had transformed the planet over 50 years. They had studied the soil, the climate, the native organisms. They had developed techniques that increased yields by 400%. The techniques were documented, but documentation was not understanding. The local farmers followed the procedures, but something was wrong. The crops were diseased. The yields were dropping. Food prices across the galaxy began to rise. First by 10%, then 20%, then 50%. Worlds that had been self-sufficient now faced shortages. Riots broke out on 17 planets. The Council deployed peacekeepers. The riots continued. Counselor Indara watched the chaos spreading and felt vindicated in her earlier warnings. But vindication brought no pleasure. She called for an emergency session of the Council. She proposed sending an official envoy to Sol System. She proposed negotiating humanity's return. She proposed admitting that mistakes had been made. Vexthor opposed her. He was not alone. Counselor Drexener of the Tethys Union argued that to negotiate would be to admit weakness. The Council had governed the galaxy for 10,000 years. They could not be seen begging a younger species to return. It would undermine the entire structure of galactic civilization. Better a temporary crisis than permanent damage to Council authority, Drexener said. His words were supported by 6 other counselors. The motion to send an envoy was defeated, but Vexthor, despite his public opposition, was privately terrified. He authorized an unofficial mission. A Krillian intelligence ship was dispatched to Sol System. The mission was classified. Its purpose was to assess human capabilities and determine whether they could be. Pressured to return, the ship entered Sol System without incident. Human defense satellites tracked it, but did not fire. The crew expected to find a primitive system, perhaps a single fortified world. What they found shocked them. Mars had been completely terraformed. The red planet was now green and blue, covered in cities and forests. Venus was enclosed in a massive orbital shell, its surface being slowly transformed. Jupiter's moons were covered in structures. The asteroid belt was being systematically mined by millions of automated drones. And Earth itself was surrounded by defensive platforms that radiated energy signatures the Krillian sensors could barely measure. The crew tried to approach Earth. A polite message was transmitted to their ship in perfect Krillian. You may observe from your current position. Any closer approach will be interpreted as hostile intent. We wish you no harm. Please respect our boundaries. They tried to scan the planet. Their sensors were blocked by technology they did not understand. They tried to contact human authorities. No response came. They waited for 3 days. On the 4th day, another message arrived. You have completed your observation. Please depart. Safe travels. The crew returned to Council Space shaken. Their report was classified immediately. Vexthor read it alone in his chambers. Humanity had been hiding their true technological capabilities for 300 years. They had shared only what they thought the Council would accept. They had never revealed what they were truly capable of building. The report included analysis from the ship's xenopsychologists. Her assessment was disturbing. Humans did not leave because they were weak. They left because they chose to. They could have demanded respect through force. They chose to withdraw instead. This suggests either remarkable patience or remarkable restraint, possibly both. It also suggests that if they ever decide they have been patient enough, we will not be able to stop them. On Kepler 7, Dr. Biora received messages from colleagues across the galaxy. They asked for help. They begged her to contact Earth. They promised that things would be different. She read each message carefully and replied to none. Instead, she continued her research, documenting the slow collapse of galactic civilization with scientific precision. Threlker found her in the lab late one night. She was studying biological samples under a microscope, making notes in her personal log. "Will they ever come back?" he asked. Ra did not look up from her work. "That depends on whether you learn what we tried to teach you." "What did you try to teach us?" She finally raised her head. Her expression was sad but not unkind. "That respect cannot be taken. It must be given freely. That strength is not always loud. That the people you ignore today may be the people you desperately need tomorrow. That kindness should be returned with kindness, not contempt." "We understand that now," Threlker said. "Do you?" Biora asked. "Or do you simply understand that you need us?" "Those are very different things." She returned to her microscope, leaving Threlker to contemplate her words in silence. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the galactic economy was in complete freefall. What had started as isolated problems had cascaded into a systemic collapse. The council met in emergency sessions daily, but every solution they proposed only made things worse. They were discovering a truth they had refused to see. Humanity had not been servants of galactic civilization. They had been its foundation. On Zendar, the food crisis reached critical levels. The autumn harvest yielded only 30% of expected crops. The spring planting had been done according to the documented procedures, but something had gone wrong. The human agronomists had possessed knowledge that went beyond written instructions. They understood the subtle relationships between soil chemistry, weather patterns, and crop genetics. They could see problems developing weeks before they became visible. The remaining farmers could follow procedures, but they could not adapt when conditions changed. Governor Hixara stood in a field of dying grain and wept. Her world had been prosperous. Her people had been well-fed. She had thought little about the quiet humans who worked the fields alongside her farmers, who gave advice freely, who stayed late to help with difficult problems. She had thought of them as hired help, nothing more. Now her people were starving. She finally understood what had been lost. Food prices across the galaxy increased by 400%. Worlds that exported food stopped exporting to preserve supplies for their own populations. Trade routes collapsed. Cargo ships sat idle because there was nothing profitable to transport. The carefully balanced galactic economy, which had functioned smoothly for millennia, was tearing itself apart. The medical situation was even more desperate. Hospitals across council space were critically understaffed. Human doctors had not been the most numerous, but they had filled essential roles that no one else wanted. They worked on frontier worlds where conditions were harsh. They treated patients that other species found distasteful. They researched diseases that affected smaller populations, diseases that were not profitable to cure. The wasting plague continued to spread. Death tolls reached 50 million. The research facility where Dr. Haniel had worked was now funded with unlimited resources. 20 of the galaxy's best scientists attempted to complete her work. They made no progress. Her notes described what she had done, but not why. Her intuitive leaps could not be replicated. The cure remained beyond reach. On the industrial world of Tarim 5, the economic collapse was total. Production had dropped to 15% of pre-withdrawal levels. Millions of workers were unemployed. The Krillian Empire, which had been the wealthiest civilization in the galaxy, was now facing bankruptcy. Councillor Vexter received death threats daily. Protesters surrounded his residence, demanding his resignation. Vexter read economic reports with shaking hands. His advisors told him the Empire's reserves would be exhausted within 3 months. After that, They would be unable to pay for basic services. Power grids would fail. Water treatment would stop. Millions would die. All because he had been too proud to acknowledge humanity's contributions. The council called another emergency session. This time, Indara's proposal to contact humanity faced less resistance. But it was Councillor Drexener who raised the question that silenced the chamber. What do we offer them? They left because we gave them nothing but contempt. If we crawl back now and beg them to save us, we only prove that we need them. We do not prove that we respect them. They will not return for need. They endured our contempt for 300 years while we needed them. Why would they return now? The chamber was silent. Every counselor understood the truth of his words. Humanity had not left because they were weak. They had left because they were strong enough to walk away. They had chosen dignity over acceptance. Any negotiation would have to offer more than just economic incentives. Across the galaxy, ordinary citizens were having their own reckoning. A young Krillian student named Vel posted a message on the Galactic Network. She wrote about her teacher, a human woman named Sujin. Sujin had taught mathematics at a school where most students were Krillian. She had stayed after class every day to help struggling students. She had purchased supplies with her own money when the school's budget was cut. She had attended every student recital and sporting event, cheering loudly even when her students came in last place. She cared about us when no one else did, Vel wrote. She made me believe I could learn, even when I was failing. She saw potential in me that I did not see in myself. I never thanked her. I never told her what she meant to me. Now she is gone, and I will never have that chance. We did not lose servants when humanity left. We lost friends. We lost family. We lost people who loved us even when we did not deserve it. The message was shared millions of times. Other people began sharing their own stories. A Pleiadian merchant told how a human named Jin Wu had taken a plasma bolt meant for him during a pirate attack, saving his life at the cost of his own injury. A Tethys Union diplomat described how Ambassador Dehayan had worked for 16 hours straight to negotiate a peace treaty, then gave all credit to the Tethys delegation so they would not lose face. Story after story emerged. Small kindnesses, unacknowledged sacrifices, quiet competence that had held the galaxy together. The Council's narrative that humanity had contributed little of value was revealed as a lie. Not a deliberate lie, perhaps, but a lie born of willful blindness. They had not wanted to see humanity's contributions because seeing would have required gratitude. Ambassador Nayang, the last human holding a diplomatic post outside Sol System, finally broke her silence. She had remained at the Tethys Union Embassy, working to finalize treaties and close out Earth's diplomatic obligations properly. She could have left months ago, but she had chosen to stay until every last detail was handled correctly. It was very human behavior. She scheduled a galaxy-wide broadcast. Billions watched as she appeared on their screens. She looked tired but composed. Her voice was steady as she spoke. For 300 years, humanity has served the Galactic Council. We did not do this because we were forced. We did this because we believed in the promise of galactic civilization. We believed that different species could work together as equals. We believed that cooperation was better than isolation. We believed that if we proved ourselves worthy, we would be accepted. She paused, letting her words sink in. Not about cooperation or community. We were wrong about the Council. For 300 years, you took our labor and gave us nothing in return. You denied us representation. You stole our innovations. You paid us less for the same work. You mocked us in your chambers of power. You made it clear, again and again, that we would never be equals, that we would always be servants. Her expression hardened. So we made a choice. We chose to leave. Not in anger, though we would have been justified in anger. Not in vengeance, though we could have taken vengeance. We left in sorrow. We left because staying was destroying us. Every insult accepted, every contribution ignored, every request denied, it was killing our spirit. She leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. Now your economy is collapsing. Your people are suffering. You need us. And you want to know if we will return. The answer is this. We will return when you prove that you have learned. We will return when you offer respect, not just economic incentives. We will return when you acknowledge that we are not your servants, not your employees, not your convenience. We are your equals. We always were. You simply refused to see it. The broadcast ended. The galaxy was left in stunned silence. Nyong returned to her quarters, packed her belongings, and booked passage on the next ship to Sol System. Her work was done. In the council chambers, Indara stood and addressed her fellow counselors. Her voice rang with authority. We have a choice. We can continue as we are, pretending that this crisis will pass and watch our civilization crumble, or we can admit the truth. We failed humanity. We failed ourselves. We built a society that valued pride over justice, tradition over merit, comfort over change. That society is dying. Perhaps it deserves to die, but we do not have to die with it. She looked at each counselor in turn. I propose we disband this council. I propose we build something new, something that honors the principles humanity tried to teach us, something worthy of their return. The vote was called. For the first time in galactic history, the council voted to dissolve itself. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was unrecognizable. 43 member species faced economic collapse. Another 17 were experiencing civil unrest. The carefully maintained order that had existed for millennia was gone. In its place was chaos, fear, and a desperate scramble for survival. The old council had dissolved. The problems it created remained. Councillor Vexter stood in his empty chambers, packing the last of his belongings. His resignation had been demanded by his own people. The Krillian Empire had lost 70% of its economic output. Unemployment was at 60%. Food rationing was in effect on 17 Krillian worlds. His people blamed him, and they were right to blame him. He had been humanity's loudest critic. He had assured everyone that humans were replaceable. He had been catastrophically wrong. Before he left, he recorded a final message. It would be broadcast across the galaxy, his last official act. He owed humanity that much, even if they never heard it. I was wrong, he said simply. I believed that the Council's age gave us wisdom. I believed that our traditions were more valuable than new ideas. I believed that humans, being younger and smaller in number, could not possibly contribute as much as the great species. I was a fool. I mistook pride for wisdom and tradition for truth. To humanity, wherever you are, I apologize. To my own people, I apologize. I failed you all. The message was viewed 2 billion times in the first hour. Some mocked Vexther. Others praised his honesty. Most simply felt sad that it had taken total collapse for him to see the truth. The new council formed slowly and carefully. Indara had been elected prime counselor by popular vote. The first time such a position had been decided democratically rather than by seniority. She surrounded herself with reformers, species representatives who had opposed the old council's arrogance. Their first task was to draft the Equity Accord, a document that would guarantee equal representation to all species, regardless of military power or economic wealth. The accord was revolutionary. It abolished the tiered system that had given older species more votes. It required that all proposals receive fair consideration. It mandated that credit for innovations go to their actual creators. It established economic protections for workers and minimum standards for wages. It was everything humanity had asked for and been denied for 300 years. Indara read the completed document with satisfaction. Then she sent it to the only human still in council. Dr. Biora received the message on Kepler 7. She read the Equity Accord 3 times, checking every clause carefully. It was good. Better than good, actually. It addressed every complaint humanity had raised. But words on paper were easy. Implementation would be harder. She sent a brief reply. This is a start. Actions matter more than promises. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, ordinary people were having their own reckoning. The stories that had begun with Vel's message about her teacher continued to spread. Every day, millions more shared their memories of humans who had touched their lives. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Humans had been everywhere, helping everyone. Asking nothing in return, a Pleiadian engineer named Kivara told how a human colleague named Kiev, Minho, had spent 6 months teaching him advanced propulsion theory. Minho had been paid to do basic maintenance, but he taught advanced concepts in his free time because he loved teaching. When Kivara received a promotion based on that knowledge, Minho had congratulated him sincerely. He never asked for credit or compensation. A Tethys Union mother named Lysa described how a human doctor named Subin had sat with her dying child for 3 days, holding his hand, singing songs, making sure he was never alone. Subin was not even on duty. She had finished her shift and simply stayed because she believed no child should die alone. When the child finally passed, Subin had wept alongside the family. The stories numbered in the millions. Each one was small, personal, easily overlooked. Together, they painted a picture of a species that had loved deeply, given freely, and asked only for acknowledgement. A species the galaxy had taken for granted until it was too late. Public opinion shifted dramatically. Protests that had demanded solutions to the economic crisis became protests demanding humanity's return. Not because people needed human labor, though they did, but because they missed their human friends. They missed the coworkers who made them laugh. They missed the teachers who believed in them. They missed the doctors who cared. They missed the neighbors who helped without being asked. The new council recognized this shift and moved carefully. They could not demand humanity's return. They could not offer economic incentives as if humans were simply expensive employees. They needed to offer something more fundamental. They needed to offer genuine change. Indara worked 16-hour days, dismantling the structures of the old council and building something new. She established independent oversight committees. She created channels for any species to propose legislation directly. She instituted regular public forums where counselors had to answer questions from citizens. She made the council transparent, accountable, and democratic in ways it had never been. But she knew this was not enough. Humans had not left because of bad policies alone. They had left because of how they were treated as people. Laws could change behavior, but they could not change hearts. That required something deeper. On Kepler 2-7, Dr. Bior watched the reforms with cautious hope. Threlker visited her lab daily, updating her on council developments. He had become an unexpected ally, using his position as station commander to advocate for the reforms across his network. "They are trying," Threlker said one evening. "The changes are real. The Equity Accord has been ratified. Economic reparations have been approved. Humanity will be given a permanent seat on the new council with full voting rights. Indara is personally guaranteeing implementation." Biora continued working with her samples, not looking up. "And the people, have they changed?" Threlker hesitated. "I think so. The stories your people left behind, they have touched everyone. We see now what we refused to see before." "You see because we are gone," Biora said quietly. "You see because you are suffering. That is not the same as respect. Respect exists even when it is inconvenient, even when it costs you something, even when the other person cannot benefit you." She finally looked at him. "Will you still respect us if we return and things improve? Will you still value our contributions when you no longer desperately need them?" "That is the question humanity needs answered." Threlker had no response. He knew she was right to be skeptical. Words were easy. Promises were cheap. Only time would prove whether the galaxy had truly learned. The new council prepared a formal delegation to Sol System. Indara would lead it personally. The delegation would be small, unarmed, and humble. They would bring the Equity Accord. They would bring the economic reparations. They would bring apologies from 43 species. But mostly they would bring themselves vulnerable and honest, asking not for forgiveness, but for a chance to prove they had changed. The delegation was ready to depart when a message arrived from Sol System. It was from Ambassador Dehayan. It's the first official communication from humanity in over a year. The message was brief. "We have observed your reforms. We have read your accord. We have heard your people's stories. Send one ship unarmed. Prime Counselor only. We will talk. That is all we promise. Indara read the message and felt both hope and fear. Humanity was willing to talk, but they promised nothing. They were not agreeing to return. They were simply agreeing to listen. It was more than the galaxy deserved, and far less than it needed. She prepared to depart alone. Before she left, she visited the memorial that had been erected in the council chambers. It listed the names of every human who had died while serving galactic civilization. Thousands of names. Engineers killed in industrial accidents, doctors who died treating contagious patients, soldiers who fell defending frontier worlds, teachers, farmers, nurses, mechanics, all the quiet people who had held the galaxy together. I cannot undo what was done to you, Indara said to the names. I can only promise to do better, to build something worthy of your sacrifice, to make sure your children, if they return, are treated as you should have been. She touched the memorial gently, then turned and walked to her ship. Behind her, the galaxy held its breath and waited. Indara piloted her small diplomatic shuttle alone through the vast emptiness between stars. She had refused an escort, refused advisors, refused even a co-pilot. Humanity had demanded she come alone, and she would respect that demand. It was a small thing, but respect was built from small things. She had learned that too late, but she had learned it. The journey to Sol System took 3 weeks. She spent the time reviewing everything humanity had contributed to galactic civilization. The list was staggering. Thousands of patents, all freely shared. Millions of hours of labor, most undervalued or unacknowledged. Countless innovations that had been credited to other species. She read it all and felt shame burning through her as her ship approached the edge of Sol System. Automated defense platforms came alive. Her sensors went mad with warnings. Energy signatures beyond anything she had seen before surrounded her ship. A calm voice spoke in perfect Pleiadian. Prime Counselor Indara, you are expected. Please proceed to the coordinates we are transmitting. Maintain current speed. Any deviation will be interpreted as hostile intent. Welcome to humanity's home. The coordinates led her past Mars. She stared in wonder at the transformed world. Where once there had been red desert, now there were blue oceans and green forests. Cities of gleaming metal and glass-covered continents. Ships moved through the atmosphere, sleek vessels unlike anything in council space. How long had humans been capable of this? How much had they hidden? Past Venus, enclosed in its orbital shell, glowing with the energy of transformation. Past Jupiter's moons, each one developed, each one hosting populations. Through the asteroid belt, where millions of automated systems mined and built and created. Finally, to Earth itself, Ambassador Nayang met her at the orbital station. The human woman looked different than she had during the broadcast. Less tired, more peaceful. She smiled as Indara exited her shuttle, a genuine smile without artifice or politics. Prime Counselor Nayang said, bowing slightly, "Thank you for coming alone as requested. That showed respect. We appreciate it." "I am the one who should thank you," Indara replied. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me at all. We do not deserve your time." Nayang's smile faded slightly. "Perhaps not, but perhaps that is why we offered it. Come, the assembly is waiting." They took a transport down to Earth's surface. Indara watched through the viewport as they descended. The planet was beautiful beyond description. Cities that blended seamlessly with nature. Forests that stretched to horizons. Oceans that sparkled under a clean sun. This was what humanity had built while serving the Council. This was what they had created with the time and resources they had left after giving everything else away. The assembly met in a simple building. Nothing like the Grand Council chambers. It was made of wood and glass, open to gardens on all sides. 50 representatives sat in a circle, no one elevated above another. They rose as Indara entered. She recognized many of them. Daehyun, looking older but unburdened. Haniel, the researcher, alive and well. Sujin, the teacher. Jinwoo, the merchant who had sacrificed himself. Many she had thought dead were simply home. Elder statesman Teho gestured to an empty chair. "Please, sit with us. We are equals here. No one stands above another." Nara sat, feeling the weight of the moment. These people had been dismissed, exploited, mocked. Now they held her fate and the galaxy's fate in their hands. They could demand anything. They could refuse everything. They had earned that right. Teho spoke first. His voice was gentle, but firm. "You have come a long way, Prime Counselor. You have brought documents and promises. Before we discuss those, we wish to understand one thing. Why did it take our absence for you to see our value?" The question was fair. Indara had prepared an answer, but sitting in this circle of people who had been wronged, her prepared words felt hollow. She decided on truth instead, "'cause we were comfortable," she said quietly. "Because acknowledging your contributions would have required us to change how we saw ourselves. The Council believed we were the best of civilization. Admitting that you, the youngest species, had surpassed us in many ways, that would have destroyed our self-image. So we chose blindness over truth. We chose comfort over justice. We were cowards." The assembly was silent. Then Sujin spoke. "And now? Now that you have no choice? Now that your civilization is collapsing? Is this about justice? Or is it still about comfort?" Indara met her eyes. "I cannot speak for everyone in council space, but I can speak for myself. I am not here because I want to save the council's economy. I am here because I watched the stories your people left behind. I learned about the humans who worked alongside us, who befriended us, who loved us despite our contempt, and I realized we did not just lose workers. We lost friends. We lost family. We lost people who made us better by their presence." She paused, her voice catching. "My own research assistant was human. Her name was Jae-hee. She worked in my lab for 20 years. She made connections I could not see. She solved problems I thought were unsolvable. When funding was cut, she continued working without pay. When I received awards for our joint research, she congratulated me sincerely and never asked for recognition." Indara's eyes filled with tears. "I never thanked her, not once. I treated her brilliance as if it were ordinary, as if she owed it to me. When you withdrew, she left a note on my desk. It said only, 'Thank you for the opportunity to serve. I hope someday you learn to see others as clearly as you see yourself.' I did not understand it then. I understand it now." She wiped her eyes. "I am not here to save the economy. I am here to beg for a chance to be Jahi's colleague again, to treat her as she deserved to be treated, to build the civilization we should have built 300 years ago." The assembly members looked at each other. Silent communication passed between them, the kind that comes from shared experience and deep trust. Finally, Daehin spoke. "We did not leave because we hated you. We left because staying was destroying us. Every insult accepted, every contribution ignored. It was killing our spirit. We are not a vengeful people. We do not wish to see the galaxy suffer, but we cannot return to what was. We cannot be your servants again." "We do not ask you to be," Indara said quickly. She produced the Equity Accord, printed on actual paper as a sign of permanence. "This document guarantees equality, full representation, fair credit for innovations, economic protections, everything you asked for and were denied. It has been ratified by all member species. It is law." Teho took the document and read it carefully. He passed it to others. They read in silence. When it completed its circle, Teho spoke again. "Hey, this is good. Better than we expected. But laws are words. Implementation is action. How do we know this is not desperation speaking? How do we know that when things improve, you will not return to old patterns?" "You don't," Indara admitted. "We can promise. We can swear. We can write laws. But only time will prove whether we have truly changed. That is why we ask not for your return, but for your observation. Send people to watch us, to verify that we are implementing these changes. If they are satisfied, send more. If not, remain here in your home. We will respect that choice. Na Young leaned forward. And if we choose to remain isolated, if we decide that we are happier here, away from council space, then we will respect that too, Indara said. You owe us nothing. We owe you everything. Whatever you choose, we will honor it. The assembly discussed among themselves for hours. Indara sat quietly, not interrupting. She watched them debate, argue gently, consider carefully. They were thorough and thoughtful. Eventually, they reached consensus. Daehyun addressed her. We will send observers. Not to council worlds yet, but to places where humans lived and worked. They will speak with the people we knew. They will assess whether genuine change is happening. This will take time, perhaps years. We ask for your patience. You have it, Indara said. Take whatever time you need. If our observers are satisfied, Daehyun continued, we will send small numbers back. Not as employees, not as servants. As equals, partners. They will work in limited capacities, testing whether the new order is real. If that succeeds, we will consider broader engagement. He paused, his expression serious. But understand this. We will never again accept being treated as lesser. We will never again smile through contempt and hope. Kindness changes hearts. If we return and find the old patterns repeating, we will leave again. And next time, it will be permanent. I understand, Indara said. That is more than fair. That is more than we deserve. The assembly rose. Taeho approached Indara and extended his hand. She took it, and they shook in the human custom. We do not hate you, he said softly. We never did. We are simply tired. So very tired. We hope you can build something worthy of our return. We truly do. So do I, Indara replied. So do I. 3 days later, Indara left Sol System. Behind her, the assembly selected their observers. Dr. Bora volunteered immediately. She would return to Kepler-7 and report on conditions there. Others chose different locations, places they had lived and worked and loved. They prepared carefully for what might be humanity's first steps, back toward the stars. When Bora's ship entered council space, she was greeted by messages. Thousands of them. Colleagues welcoming her back, students thanking her for her teaching, friends saying they had missed her. She read each one carefully, looking for signs of genuine change or hollow politeness. The line was difficult to draw at Kepler-7. Threlker waited at the dock. He smiled when she emerged, a real smile full of relief. Welcome back, he said simply. I'm not back. Biora corrected gently. I am observing. There is a difference. I understand, Threlker said. Then let me show you what has changed. Let me prove that your absence taught us what your presence could not. Biora nodded slowly. Then show me. But understand, I am not easily convinced. My people have been hurt too deeply for pretty words to heal the wounds. I know, Threlker said. That is why I will not offer words. Only actions. Only time. Only truth. They walked through the station together. Behind them, across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human observers returning cautiously. Former colleagues greeting them with hope and fear. The beginning of something new, or perhaps the beginning of the end of something old. Time would tell which it was. Bira made her first log entry that night. I have returned to Kepler-7, not as an employee, not as a servant. As an observer and a judge, the galaxy has 18 months to prove it has learned. I am not optimistic, but I am willing to watch. That is all humanity offers now, the chance to be proven wrong. May they use it wisely. She looked out at the stars, the same stars that shone on Earth, and wondered if her people would ever truly come home.